Welcome to a brand new episode of We've Got Issues, where we talk to you about thousands of pages of comic book issues here at Comic Republic. I am Agent E, your host for today, and on the couch we've got our head of story at Comic Republic, Wale Awelenje. Hi Wale, thanks for joining us again.
Thank you very much for having me, Agent E. This couch, as you mentioned, it is very comfortable and it's also kind of familiar. Kind of reminds me of an office chair.
For those of you who missed the very first episode of We've Got Issues, you've got to listen back into Wale Awelenje talk about the Comic Republic universe and all you can expect. Today, however, we're going to be delving into the Comic Republic universe. Now, basically, we've heard of universes for other comic book publishers. For instance, Marvel's got the Avengers, DC's got Justice League. Wally, what is the name of the Comic Republic universe? I was reading online, and apparently, some media houses call Comic Republic African Avengers. Please tell me we've got a cooler name than that.
Afro Avengers. No. Of course, nothing quite as lame a derivative as that. So, in the Comic Republic universe, there is indeed a team at the center of things, sort of a group of diverse individuals from multiple titles that we have sort of coming together, sort of being forced together to fight a singular threat. This is something, as you've mentioned, it's something that happens in most comic book universes. We call ours the Vanguards, and you can read their adventures on the Comic Republic app. We have a series called Vanguards. It's at the moment split into three sub-series. It starts off with Union, which is basically the story of how the Vanguards basically get together. And it's not planned. They didn't come together and say, "Oh, we're putting together a team. It's going to be called the Vanguards." No, as a matter of fact, what happened was Guardian Prime was he found himself in a very difficult situation. He's defending the world from global threats, but unfortunately, the world has borders, and those make that kind of thing very complicated. And in order to do what he needed to do, he found he needed to sort of violate sort of like international airspace, and being a Nigerian, he found it hard to get a visa and so on and so forth. So that's all very
Even
interesting, but
superheroes are
basically
having the problem.
but basically, at the end of the day, what ended up happening was Guardian Prime ended up defending countries outside of Nigeria, and he angered some of the most ancient spiritual deities. And in order to punish him, they launched an all-out assault on Lagos while he wasn't there. And so the Comic Republic heroes that include Iriti, Ajay, Powerbox, they all had to sort of come together and fight off this new threat. And then when it was done, they had to leave Nigeria to assist Guardian Prime in finally putting an end to it. And it was at that point that they decided they would need to be able to come together to do things like this in the future. And that's how the Vanguards were born. And that's the story of Vanguards Union. So if you go to the Comic Republic app, just look for the very first series. It's called Vanguards Union, and that sort of tells you that story. And then, of course, after that, we have the Aftermath story, which, of course, the consequences of all the things that were sort of done in haste during Union are sort of taken care of there. And then we have Vanguard's Overwatch, which I think we're going to be discussing today.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much. I think it's just reading through the app just a couple of moments before this interview. I was looking at how the different characters came together to interrelate. It's quite interesting to see your Jade Waziri smack in the middle of conversations, to see the extremes, and then to see Ajay, and then to see. So it's really nice to see the different dynamics and how they still retain their individualism, irrespective of the fact that they're brought together in one universe. So I encourage you to have a read for those watching if you haven't. It's quite intriguing. But one thing that has been coming to me in our social media space is, why have we mixed other gods with African gods in this particular story? I know some people felt very strongly about it, and we're putting that in the comment segment. Why have we, in telling the story of Vanguards, mixed other gods with our African gods? So, see, I'm looking out for you all. I have Wale on the couch today. He's on the hot seat, and he's going to tell us why that was done. So, what do you have to say for yourself?
Okay, so basically, I think what you're probably talking about in this case is you're essentially talking about the latest threat that the Vanguards are facing in Vanguards Overwatch. For those who aren't yet up to speed on Vanguards, Vanguards Overwatch is the third series of Vanguards, and it happens after the Vanguards have already come together. So the Vanguards come together to fight against a group of quote unquote minor deities who are, shall we say, not very happy about a lot of things that are being done by various governments around the world with ancient African artifacts, trying to sort of unlock their secrets and sort of like get the magic and the power out of them. And so they attempt to commit genocide, and that is what the Vanguards fight against. Now, after the Vanguards defeat these deities, they anger the totality of ancient gods, ancient myths that exist all over the world. So in the world of Comic Republic, we have this concept of a sort of a group of beings known as quote unquote the first race. So they over the years they've been sort of spotted by humanity, they've interacted with humanity, and they've gone into myth as gods. So people consider them gods, but they're not really gods. They're just sort of like very advanced beings who've been here for a very, very long time. And at some point in history they sort of scattered around the world, and they just sort of settled at different parts of the earth. And the people of those parts would interact with members of the first race, and they would see them almost as though they were people from their own culture. There's an ancient mirror that split into five and went across to the world to five different cardinal points. And if you go to America, that's where you would have the element of fire. And that is where you would have, for instance, the first race identified as Quetzalcoatl, who is the South American sort of god of storms. And then, of course, we go northwards to Europe, and there we have the thunder god, Zeus, from Greece. And then, of course, we also go to the east, to Japan, where we have the sun goddess Amaterasu. And they all come together, and they form a sort of a governing body that sort of protects the world, which they call the Overwatch. So the story of Vanguard's Overwatch involves this sort of global alliance of gods coming together to warn the heroes about something terrible that is coming their way as a result of some of their actions in previous books. I can't go into too much more detail, unfortunately, because we have a lot of really big things planned in the Comic Republic universe. The Comic Republic characters do exist in Africa, and the stories are centered on Africa, but they do in fact exist in the larger world, and they interact with the world. And we have great things planned for the interactions with the first race and the main characters. I'm not even sure whether I can talk about the nature of these plans, but if you read Vanguards Overwatch, we should be releasing the final issue of that soon. You'll be in perfect position to understand sort of global nature of the interaction between our characters. I'm not sure whether that answers your question, Agent E. I have a feeling.
does.
Yeah,
It does. It does. I
yeah.
think you put a bit more clarity there. And what most people respond to is just pages or scenes that they have found on our social media platforms, but some haven't actually read the story. So it's really good that you put some context into it
Mm.
and you've explained a bit more. Now there's so much suspense. I cannot wait to read the very next issue of Vanguard's Overwatch, which is coming out soon. And I just wanted to say a big thank you for taking the time to come back on our couch, virtual couch.
Thank you very much.
And I hope that we can with you again in the future on any of the exciting projects in the Comic Republic universe.
Absolutely. And I'll be happy to come back anytime you need me on.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Wale. And that's our show, guys. Remember, we've got issues, thousands of pages of comic book issues. Visit www.thecomicrepublic.com to read them, love them, and share them. See you next time. Bye.